PJ Net Live Friday night with Refugee. Let's go down the checklist. We are putting in a nebula background. We have monitors 1 and 2 standing by. We have a rendezvous session connected. Let's hope it stays stable this time. And we'll be ready to switch to the studio in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, good evening and welcome again for those of you who might have been here earlier to PJNet Live. Sorry that we were having some problems connecting to Refugee, but we are prepared. We have reconnected. We will try again. And in order to do that, I need to have Sulu please move us over to, at warp speed, the swamp and bayou of Louisiana. There we are. Uhuru, if you would please put everything on screen and visual, and we will get ready. Tonight, a refugee would like to talk about some of the recent events over the week. Many of you have heard about some of the Supreme Court decision, but Roger in Refugee has gone beyond that, and he has a lot of analysis and commentary to bring our way, and let's hope that we can connect to him from the green room. There he is. Roger, what is that around your neck? You seem to be wearing some jewelry tonight.
Oh, I actually always am. I don't. Maybe I usually have it tucked in or something like that.
Okay, well, that's fine. And we were talking earlier this week. You've gotten yourself all worked up. I think maybe. So well, just let her rip, man. I'm just going to sip some coffee and let you take it from here.
Yeah, well, Mark, what we're going to talk about tonight is largely the Indiana law that the Supreme Court decided on this week, and it's a lot of information, so I have to organize it. So one of the first things I want to do is talk about just exactly what the Indiana law said before we talk about what the Supreme Court did with it.
Good place to start. Yeah.
Good place to start. So what did the Indiana law say? It's it was basically broken up into two parts. One part said that the human remains from abortion must be treated as human remains, that they could not be sold, and that they must be buried or cremated. Can no longer be treated as simply medical waste and thrown away through the medical waste disposal system. Must be cremated or buried, and literally referred to it as human remains. Aborted babies as human remains. So that's one thing the law did. The other thing that the law did is it outlawed abortion if the abortion was being done for certain types of reasons. And the reasons given were because of the race of the unborn child, because of the gender of the unborn child, or because the unborn child had been diagnosed with Down syndrome or any other disability. So those things could not be used as a reason for doing the abortion.
An interesting side note is, according to the liberal narrative, gender is fluid anyway.
There you go. Okay. So there you go. So, I mean, some people just on the surface might not have quite understood even what the law was trying to do. Okay. Because, well, if those abortions are going to be illegal, why are other abortions going to be legal? And what is it exactly that you're going for here? Well, I think the way the Supreme Court decided the case, and specifically Clarence Thomas's rather lengthy concurrence that he wrote, it gives us a lot of ideas. First of all, the federal appellate court had thrown out the Indiana law, said that this put an undue burden, said that you could not outlaw abortions for those certain types, and it said that the requirement of burial or cremation would force up abortion costs and would put an undue burden on women's constitutional right to abortion. So they threw out the law. This was being appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was being asked to reinstate the law. Now, what did the Supreme Court do? Well, it made a kind of a weird split decision and non-decision, and it did it by a 7-2 vote. but there's going to be serious ramifications about this. First of all, it reinstated the part of the law that said that these are human remains that must be treated as human remains, cannot be sold, must be buried or cremated, and can't simply go to the normal medical waste disposal system. So it reinstated that part of the law, and which means that the Supreme Court has, for the first time in history, ruled that aborted babies are dead human beings, and that a state has an interest in deciding how human remains are going to be treated. That's huge for possible implications in the future,
Mm-hmm.
okay, for possible future decisions. Now, let me give you the bad news. They did not reinstate the rest of the law. But how did they get to a 7-2 decision on it? Well, they refused to even address the rest of it. They didn't agree or disagree with the court. They said we're simply punting on that decision. But in saying that, they also said that they wanted to let those issues percolate in the lower courts and get more lower courts weighing in on those issues. Now, Mark, this case is done. So how's it going to percolate? The Supreme Court just decided basically not to hear that part of the case because they want it to percolate. The only way it percolates is if more laws get passed outlawing those types of abortions. So they basically almost sent a signal to the states of keep passing some laws. Keep passing some laws here. And for people who get a little confused here, about why the court would do something like this. This has Justice Roberts written all over it. And it might have Kavanaugh, I don't know, because this is the kind of thing Kennedy used to do. Kennedy didn't like 5-4 decisions. Roberts does not like 5-4 decisions. Roberts certainly does not like 5-4 decisions that make major changes in law. My sense on Roberts is he would have decided Roe v. Wade differently all those years ago, and he would like to eventually overturn Roe v. Wade, but that he thinks it hurts the reputation of the court or does the country damage to have major upheaval in law by 5-4 Supreme Court decisions out of the blue. So I think he's waiting for the makeup of the court to change. I think he's hoping that it can get to a 6-3 or 7-2 decision to overturn Roe. And I also think he believes in incrementalism, which is the very reason they're saying, hey, states, pass more laws like this. So let's give us more bites at this apple. Let's have more people weigh in. Now, that part of it about Roberts, I got to be honest, it ticks me off. If the case was wrongly decided, the case was wrongly decided. It should be overturned now. And it's not a part of Roberts' job to worry about, the reputation of the court or how shocking this is going to be or how he's going to get treated at cocktail parties or anything else. And I wish he would just have the guts to overturn Roe v. Wade now, but he doesn't. Now, the bad side on this, I think that probably next year, unless Ginsburg dies and gets replaced, when a law like the Alabama law goes before the court, I don't think that they're going to strike down Roe v. Wade. I just don't think Roberts is ready to go there yet. So I don't think that this court is going to strike down Roe v. Wade. And I think we need another justice. On the positive side, though, the very fact that Roberts wrote in an opinion that he wanted this stuff to percolate, okay, and that he wanted more, basically that he wants there to be more opinion on this, tells me that, he's open to changing his vote down the road. And that gives us some hope. It also gives us some hope that for the first time, the Supreme Court has said, these are dead human beings.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal. But Clarence Thomas, Mark, wrote about a 20-page concurring opinion in which he also put some things on the record for the first time. And he said, and it was very fascinating what he put in the record. First of all, he basically, congratulated the court for admitting that these were human remains and for saying that a state had an interest in the way human remains are treated. And he just concurred with that part of the decision. But in the part that they didn't pick up, he said, the fact that the court is not deciding on this issue of whether these certain types of abortions, the fact that we didn't overturn that decision by the lower court we're taking no position on this. Don't take the attitude that we are agreeing with the lower court. We're
Mm-hmm.
taking no position.
Right.
And he said, we will eventually and soon have to take a position. And he said, the reason we will have to take a position is because essentially what the Indiana law did is it outlawed abortion that is being done for reasons of eugenics. And then he said, there is a long history in the United States of a link between abortion and eugenics. And he
Mm-hmm.
quoted Margaret Sanger, and he
Mm-hmm.
talked about the early days of Planned Parenthood. And he made this basically, he took it to that level of you're trying to, you're trying to wipe out the black race. You're trying to hold down the black numbers. I mean, he took it to that level at the Supreme Court and said, look, we're absolutely going to have to pick up this and deal with this soon. And so that part of it is fascinating to me. And that's why all the conservatives, I think, went along with this. I think the conservatives went along with this, even the ones that were ready to overturn Roe v. Wade now, because they said, okay, well, instead of losing 5-4, let's get a 7-2 split decision and encourage states to keep passing laws and to keep putting this issue before us, because the makeup of this court is going to change. Ginsburg chose to write a dissent, and while she ignored all of Thomas's opinion on eugenics, didn't even go there, just didn't talk about it, acted as though Thomas hadn't written that stuff, just not worthy of consideration, I guess, to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She did take offense to the fact that Clarence Thomas referred to the mother in some of his writing, and he referred to the mother of the unborn child. And she came out and said that a woman that is having an abortion is not a mother, and that he was misusing the term mother.
In a way, I agree with her.
So, I agree with her in a moral sense.
Yeah.
And in a biological sense, that's a mother. There's mother and there's child, and that is a mother. So, Mark, before I get your comments, well, first of all, do you want to comment on anything we've said so far before kind of going to the next angle on this?
The thing, and I have not read the opinion, either opinion, so I'm really giving an opinion on your opinion of their opinion.
Right.
But some of the subtleties of language and some of the psychosocial dynamics that are in play here, when Judge Thomas calls out Margaret Sanger, I just want to wet my pants, because it is almost like the Holocaust. The people on the other side are in denial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these talking points are well known in the conservative camp, and I would be fascinated, and it would be, well, let's just say it. What if the left has to address that narrative and say, well, that's a long time ago. Social norms have changed. Because time and time again, they will take down statutes. They will defame the likes of John Wayne, Robert E. Lee, Betty, what's her name? The thing that, for
Right.
some remark made 30, 40, 50 years ago. Now, realistically speaking, Roger, I grew up at a time where the N-word was in common use.
Mm-hmm.
Now, never to say it was okay, never to say it was anything other than what it is, but it was not held in the same public opinion as it would be today.
Right.
I forget who I was talking to the other day, but the use of the N-word has now exceeded moral repugnance in excess of taking the Lord's name in vain. Literally.
Yes, it has.
Yes, it has.
It's almost the only thing that we refer to in that way. The
That's correct.
N-word.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
right. It's almost like, there are people that will change the spelling of God's name, leave letters out of the word, because just the simple use of that name, that word representing God, the symbol, is a form of taking it in vain, well, that's very much the way the N word has been treated. Unless, of course, you're black, then you're free to use the word at your leisure.
Right. Right.
So
Mark, you
I
brought up.
I'm glad to see Thomas on two things. One, let's bring Margaret. Let's call out Margaret Sanger. She occupies three positions, three places in
Hmm.
the Smithsonian Institute. Two portraits and one bust.
Hmm.
And this is a historical fact. This is not fiction. This is not something dug up from under a rock.
No.
She
Let
was
me tell you the way you
absolutely
wondered how the
racist.
left was going to deal with it. I'm going to tell you how they've dealt with it so far.
Okay,
Ginsburg didn't address it.
right.
She literally remained silent on it. Didn't address any of Thomas's points at all. In the press, they're basically laughing. Oh, here goes Clarence Thomas again. Some sort of wild claims about Margaret Sanger, and then they move on. Okay, so that some are
Wild
just trying to
claims.
not bring it up. Some are trying to laugh it off. But look at what look. Let me tell you what every pro-life legislature should be doing. Every okay, Louisiana, we just passed a law very similar to Alabama's law. Our Democratic governor signed it into law yesterday. Interestingly enough, the Louisiana law only takes effect if the Alabama law survives scrutiny. That's what they did as far as the date of it going into effect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost the same law. It's almost the exact same law that Louisiana passed. Well, it's time for them to go back and pass another law. And it's time for them to pass a law outlawing abortion for and use the word eugenics in the law. Use the word,
Yeah.
Thomas has given you a signal.
Yeah.
Use the word eugenics. And then make reference to the fact the Supreme Court in such and such a case, versus Indiana, has already decided that the unborn child, that has been aborted was a human being. That these are dead human remains. Okay,
Well,
so
another
the question of whether this is a human being or not has already been answered affirmatively by the court. And certainly, we can't allow discrimination on the basis of their color, and we can't allow these eugenic practices to go forward. States need to pass more laws. What we have
how
an
about a
opportunity here to do is advance the argument. I know we want to, Mark, we want to win the game. We want to win the game so badly, and unfortunately, we don't have the chance to do that right now. We have a chance to move the football. We have, and we've been moving the football. And one of the reasons this was so important for me to start talking about now and getting the word out, I'm not trying to be a damper in anybody's parade by saying the Alabama law is going to get thrown out. Look, if it doesn't get thrown out, I will be surprised. If they overturn Roe v. Wade, I'll celebrate. But Mark, I know what it can be like sometimes when the whole movement gets overexcited by something, and then they're surprised by a negative result, and it's just a gut punch that makes you want to quit.
Well,
And
I can
I
tell you
don't.
very much. First of all, I want to remind you something that you said years ago that I've never heard. One of the arguments that that's not a human life is that no death certificate is issued. Wouldn't it be a nice little amendment to a future law passed by a state that when an abortion is performed, there should be a death certificate since they are human remains?
That's something from the right. Now, there's complications from the left. Antonin Scalia the Great, who was almost perfect on this issue, but not. He took the position that because of things like you just said, that the legal personhood of the unborn had not been established. He was opposed to Roe v. Wade, but his attitude was that the Constitution is silent. He was like, yep, they're living human beings scientifically,
Well,
but
yeah.
we never treated them as legal persons under the law. Now, what the left could do to fight back is they can start saying, okay, well then if you're conceived in the United States, you're a citizen. Now I would go back and say, no, the Constitution says natural born. It doesn't say legal person. It says natural born.
Whatever that
Okay.
means, yeah. Which is
But
never.
you know what? I welcome that kind of a battle. I welcome any battle where we're talking about this and we're talking about what a human being is and what a legal person is. Because, Mark, we advance the football. We advance the football. And here's the thing to remember. Every life is precious. So while I don't want to compromise on issues like rape or incest, and while I don't want to pass laws that devalue any human life, I do want to pass laws that will save a life here, another life there, another life there. And the fact of the matter is, that when things happen like the 24-hour waiting laws periods get passed, the number of abortions go down because so many women change their mind.
Yeah,
Um,
and you and I actually disagree on that because implicit in if you say let's put a 24-hour waiting period, implicitly you're saying it's okay to have an abortion if you'll wait 24 hours. And it's never okay. But here's the
I don't think you are saying it's okay, particularly if you're making it a state law at the same time as you've outlawed abortion in the state,
well,
but the
that's a
Supreme Court
different
has struck
context.
down your law that outlaws abortion. Okay,
Yeah.
you're basically just saying, okay, unfortunately, the federal government is forcing us to allow babies to be killed here, and we're trying to put whatever brakes on it. So long as you already have a clean pro-life bill on the books, okay, then I think you're in good shape.
That's a
The
very
clinic
different
regular.
backdrop.
The,
Let me hold your thought a minute. Coach Prasic wants to comment. What we're seeing here play out is this week has been a significant long run followed by a significant first down after a third and long. As a coach, when you start seeing this momentum build, you're getting 3 yards up the middle, 3 yards up the middle, 3 yards up the middle, but they want to throw that long bomb to get the touchdown. Okay, this is the wager. This is the risk that you take. If you'll be patient and keep advancing the ball downfield, getting first, moving the sticks, you will cross the goal line. But if you throw the ball, you could lose the game. You could get intercepted. And this is, I think, the point that you and I have discussed earlier that we want to make to conservatives. By all means, let's celebrate the victories. The fact that laws are being passed, the fact that the entire public opinion toward the tide's turning. That's clear.
oh, it's turning. In
But
fact, Mark, you know what part of the reason all these laws are being passed right now is that Trump got a couple picks to the court, but a
sure,
part of it is a backlash to what these liberal states have done, like what they've done in New York, basically, legalizing infanticide right through the end of pregnancy and even beyond.
even
There's
beyond.
a backlash going on against the pro-death
Well,
movement.
I guess that's an example of what I was saying. They tried to throw the Hail Mary, and they went too
Mm-hmm.
far. Okay, they tried to get too much too fast, and it blew up in their face. And I'm glad that it did. But I think that we can celebrate, but we do need to be careful because think of it this way: if you've only got one shot at a Supreme Court decision, wouldn't it be better to go in with the cards stacked a little bit more in our favor, particularly if Ginsburg were to be replaced with almost anyone? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
almost anyone. Now, you personally think, and let's see how we're doing here. We're at 23. We're about 24 minutes in, so let's not take too much of a detour. But you have reason to think that Amy Barrett might be the next
Yeah,
nominee.
that's what it has been leaked that specifically when Trump ended up making the decision on Kavanaugh last time that he told his advisors, I want to save Amy Coney Barrett to replace Ginsburg. That's who I want to replace Ginsburg with. And I like her, but that's who I want to replace Ginsburg with. He's got that seat basically marked out for Amy Coney
All right, let's take
Barrett.
another detour. Uh, some news that came out this week. The I hate abor- abortion of an election in Alabama where a Democratic senator defeated Judge Roy Moore. That
Right.
was an upset and surprise to well, not really. Some of the pundits were saying that if Moore was the nominee, that would be an advantage to the Democrat because he's so far right. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you're aware, but Judge Moore has announced that he'll be running for, that seat was only filled for the remainder of the term. So it's
Mm-hmm.
coming up, and Judge Moore is running. Wouldn't it be interesting if we were able to flip Alabama's Senate seat back to Republican, get the Senate tilted even more so, to
Mm-hmm.
where a confirmation of a nominee such as Barrett, strategically, assuming that they were thinking
Mm-hmm.
strategically, easier to get. Kavanaugh was the quote more electable.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and save it for when conditions are more favorable to get someone like Amy in. that could play out.
Hmm. Hmm. It also makes it a little bit harder, look, if you defeat a woman nominee after a woman just died, you don't know that the next nominee is going to be a woman.
Yeah.
That plays into it too with those female senators,
Hmm.
and so on and so forth. So it's big, but Mark, I just want to encourage people: don't get overexcited at the victories. Don't get overly depressed at the losses. There's some big losses coming. There's some big losses coming, but there's some victories coming too. There's an interesting thing going on in Missouri right now. I don't know if you're aware of this. There's only one abortion clinic left in Missouri.
Oh yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
It has lost its license to perform abortions, um, and it is scheduled to be closed in a matter of days. Now they are attempting to get a judge to order the state of Missouri to basically leave them open. But it's because of violations of existing law that have been upheld by the courts that they've lost their license.
Right.
Okay,
The reasons that have
who knows
these.
if they'll find some liberal judge to say this is an undue burden. Okay, but big deal. Will all those babies be saved? No. But guess what? If all of a sudden you got to travel 245 miles away from St. Louis,
Actually, the nearest abortion clinic is only 15 miles away. Okay, across the
depends
river.
from where you are in the state.
Well, but from that clinic, it's literally across the river in St. Louis.
Across
Okay.
the river. Okay.
Right,
Okay.
literally. And I did see on the CBS Evening News this doctor, and this is what outrages me. This doctor is saying, my concern, or first of all, like you said, the reason their license is not being renewed is because of sanitation violations, rules,
Yeah.
regulations. Has nothing to do with the abortion issue. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with compliance of statutory law and regulations that are in place. But this doctor is just, just passionately saying, my concern is for my patients. And I thought, listen, give me the name of even one of your patients. You don't know your
Mm-hmm.
patient. The first time your patient sees you, your head's between their legs with instruments.
Right.
That's not a doctor relationship. Get
No.
get real. And I think his concern is he would be unemployed, at least temporarily. And
Mm-hmm.
I just can't stand the hypocrisy. I have more respect for people like Gosnell and such that say, yeah, it is a human life, but the mother has bodily autonomy in all regards, even if it is a human. I have more respect for that than I have this, what about women, women's health, their reproductive
Right.
health. Listen, they're not sick. They're not sick. Pregnancy
Mm-hmm.
is not a disorder. Okay.
It's not an illness.
Yeah, right.
An
This is,
unborn child is not a parasite.
yeah. And I just, it makes me want to, well, it angers me, to tell you the truth. And I think the anger is justified scripturally because we are to be angered at the things that anger God. Doesn't say don't get angry. All anger
Mm-hmm.
is not sin. Now, if you're angry because somebody hurt your feelings and you want to get them back and seek revenge, I think that's what the scriptures speak to when they speak against
Right.
anger. Well, put it this way: anger cannot be categorically a sin because God gets angry.
Absolutely. It's not categorically. So now I will say this a little bit. I don't want to stray too much. I will say this. Just like we all have gifts from God, we all have certain defects. And there are some of us that maybe aren't the best ones to do things in righteous anger because we have a problem with too much anger in our heart, and that's a weakness for us. And so you find somebody that doesn't have that weakness, sometimes. And but no, there are times when righteous anger is called for. Mark, if I'm going down the road and I see a black man, or no, so let's make it different. Let's say a black woman, and she's killing a puppy in her backyard. I'm going to be outraged. Society's not going to be confused that I'm going to be outraged, and the police are going to respond, and she's going to be charged with animal cruelty. If I call the police, and nobody's going to say, "Well, this white man doesn't know what it's like to be a black woman." And, she was on her own private property in her own backyard. The
It's her
dog was her
dog, yeah,
property.
yeah.
Yeah. But we'll do it over human beings. Okay. We come up with these stupid arguments as excuses to kill human beings. Um, Mark, every one of the news stories about these laws, every discussion that we have, every time we refuse to just let this issue be closed, it ends up changing the mind of some pregnant woman out there, and she ends up having the child, and it saves a life.
What if
I'm
what if
telling
we
you,
would
we
post a
are
bond?
saving lives.
What if we could post a bond to tell a woman considering abortion that we will pay you $100,000 to carry that baby to term?
Um, it's a good idea, Mark. It is essentially being done now, though. It's just not as publicized. There are certainly waiting lists to adopt babies, even babies with disabilities. And there are certainly families that are willing to pay the medical expenses of mothers and so on and so forth. But doing something like that and publicizing it like that might be a good way to go. Now, of course, what you got to look at is you got to look at what the left will do, and they'll use Alinsky tactics to use our own rules against us. They'll literally start, if they'll say, okay, let's start bringing in women to get pregnant to go
Right.
collect this hundred
Well,
thousand
that's,
dollars and then spend the hundred.
you've
Yeah,
incentivized fornication.
yeah, right. You've incentivized fornication, so you can't go necessarily too far with it like that. But certainly letting women know that they will be taken care of, that the baby will be adopted, that their medical expenses will be covered.
But it would blow
Um,
the smoke off a lot of the talking points and narrative. That it's a woman's choice and it has convenience. Oh, this baby wouldn't have a chance. I wouldn't be able to raise it. Oh no, you're wealthy now.
yeah,
It would
yeah,
change.
yeah.
It would discredit their narrative because you can't have it both ways, and that's what they're trying to do. Okay,
Mm-hmm,
if women are they say they're pro-choice. Well, they chose to have sex.
mm-hmm,
Okay, so there's your choice.
yeah.
Then
Unfortunately, Mark, the excessive contraceptive attitude in this country separated the idea of sex and consequences.
right.
And people somehow got this idea that they should be able to have sex as often as they want to with no fear of consequences.
Yeah,
And
yeah. That sex has essentially been degraded to a form of recreation and self-indulgence, rather
recreational
than
activity.
uh,
Yes.
in teaching my daughter about sex. One of the talking points is that humans are the only individuals that do this kind of thing in private.
Mm-hmm,
In the animal kingdom, you don't see them go hide and close the door and shut the blinds. It's purely procreative. It's purely about survival of the species. Yet, God created us differently. That there is
mm-hmm,
something sanctified or sanctimonious about sexuality in humans that is different than other animals. So I think I don't buy into a lot of the We've had a lot of discussions, Catholic versus Protestant, on this in the past, but I do give you credit in what you said. Is the advance of contraception has devalued has obfuscated the very
mm-hmm,
nature of our sexuality.
mm-hmm. It has. It just has.
Yeah.
And and it's a shame. Well, Mark, we're going to wrap it up. I'm glad we got this in, but again, I just want to emphasize we're moving the ball, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, don't get too depressed that we don't score the big touchdowns. Don't get too depressed when the quarterback gets sacked here and there. Um, we're moving the ball. We are changing public opinion. We are saving lives, and there's a justice or two in that court between Roberts and Kavanaugh that might not be ready today, but they want to get there. They literally want to overturn Roe. They're just, they don't want it to be a 5-4 decision out of the blue. And we're winning, and we
Well,
need to
let's
keep.
yeah. Well, let's run the score up when that happens. Hey, listen, thanks for taking the time out tonight. Now, well, again, refugee. your analytical and passionate perspective on this and many issues are very valuable. Can't wait to see what's going to be going on next week, and we'll just see you then.
All righty, Mark. God bless you. Glad we
All
got
right.
through the technical.
There we go. Yes, you may not have heard him at the last minute. We were having some technical issues earlier. I'm glad that everything held together because Refugee had been spending quite a bit of time preparing for what he wanted to share with us tonight. Let me give you a brief update before we hand it back over to Hazards 4. We're a little bit stalled out on the Blexit. I will be trying to circle up with the leadership in Alabama next week. Don't know how successful I'll be. It's certainly still on my radar, but it's hard to get. Well, it's kind of like herding cats sometime. Also, tomorrow night, I have a previous obligation. It is my wife's high school reunion. So we will not have, it is certain that we will not have Wild Bill on tomorrow night live. Whether or not we will have something ready recorded, we will simply have to find out. But just wanted to kind of give you a heads up in case you get here expecting to see Wild Bill and for some reason we're not able to do it. Just wanted to give you a heads up. So we'll turn things back over to Hazards 4 as we continue the great tunes, great videos, great fellowship right here on PJ Net Live.